The Boston Globe says that Donald Trump has blood on his hands. The editorial board has published an editorial under the headline, "A President Unfit for a Pandemic. Much of the suffering and death coming was preventable. The president has blood on his hands." The editorial fittingly begins with a line from the Irish poet William Butler Yeats. "Things fall apart, the center cannot hold," wrote W.B. Yeats in 1919. A century later, it's clear the epicenter cannot hold. Catastrophic decisions in the White House have doomed the world's richest country to a season of untold suffering. In that Yeats poem that the Globe quoted, these lines immediately follow the line that the Boston Globe quoted. "Anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned." Donald Trump conducts a ceremony of innocence every day at the White House briefing, in which he has denied any responsibility for the failures of his administration's response to a pandemic that they knew was coming since the first week of January.
No, I don't take responsibility at all, because we were given a set of circumstances, and we were given rules, regulations, and specifications from a different time.
In his daily ceremony of innocence, Donald Trump pretends that he never said that the coronavirus was not going to be a very deadly pandemic in the United States. He pretends he never said this.
When you have 15 people, and the 15 within a couple of days is going to be down to close to zero, that's a pretty good job we've done.
The Boston Globe has been recording every word Donald Trump has said about the coronavirus and everything Donald Trump has done and not done about the coronavirus. And the Globe's editorial board reached this conclusion: the months the administration wasted with prevarication about the threat and its subsequent missteps will amount to exponentially more COVID-19 cases than were necessary. In other words, the president has blood on his hands. Joining us now, Bina Venkataraman, the author of that editorial. She served as an advisor to President Obama during the Ebola epidemic. She is now the editorial page editor for the Boston Globe. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. What brought you at the Globe to the point of going this far in your language, to the blood on his hands language that you've chosen?
It's not language we chose lightly, and I thank you for quoting more of Yeats than I could fit on the page and in print. But we really were looking at the facts, and the president has been trying to revise history as it's happening, as you noted, through his press conferences and making insinuations about hoarding at hospitals to excuse his lack of getting supplies to states and cities for their hospitals. And it's important, I think, as he tries to recalibrate our expectations so that suddenly hundreds of thousands of deaths are being expected and being declared a measure of success by this administration, so that we don't take that for granted. And we look back at 2 months ago when the first case of COVID-19 was identified in the U.S., and the president said it's just one guy coming from China, it's no big deal, this will amount to nothing. The colossal failure to act to get testing underway, if we contrast the way the United States, the world's richest country, with the most sophisticated medical facilities and research institutions, the world's leading scientists, contrast that with the way that South Korea and Germany have rolled out testing, isolated cases, done contact tracing to really contain the epidemic on their shores. The United States has failed to do that. And in epidemics, in pandemics, timing is everything. Timing is the difference between a contained outbreak that can be controlled within weeks and a devastating and deadly epidemic like the one we are seeing unfold, and we will continue to see unfold over this coming month. And that's because epidemics, outbreaks grow exponentially. If we had contained those early cases, if we had identified them, if the president hadn't been so worried about seeing the stock market dip during an election year, if he hadn't been trying not to count, not to test the cruise ship passengers aboard that ship off on the Pacific coast of California, because he didn't want our numbers to look high, we might have been able to contain and address this crisis much sooner. But you can also look at subsequent missteps going all through February and into March, including how he's failed to really seize the role of the federal government in a crisis like this, where the role is really to help coordinate among states and distribute supplies. Instead, states, including Massachusetts, which, by the way, as you know, has a Republican governor, but it's a red governor in a blue state, our own governor has had trouble getting access to those supplies. Mere fractions of what we've requested from the national stockpile have arrived here in Massachusetts. And that's true in states and cities around the country. What they're needing and the supplies that they need to protect their hospital workers, their nurses, their doctors, their first responders are not being supplied by the federal government. In fact, the federal government has outbid states and governors in trying to get supplies. He's stepped in and taken away ventilators from states. And that is, I think, just a catastrophic use of the federal government's power when, in fact, it should be coordinating and making this easier.
We have polls showing that Trump-supporting voters and Fox News viewers took the coronavirus threat much less seriously than other people, no doubt because of the messaging they were getting from the Fox channel and from President Trump. Is that part of your case, that, in effect, more people are sick tonight, more people are dying tonight, and more people are dead tonight because Donald Trump was president at this time?
Absolutely, Lawrence. And information, scientifically valid information, is critical in outbreaks. It's critical in public response. And having the president downplay this for weeks and weeks, for months, really, and having Fox News be a sort of megaphone for that misinformation certainly has cost lives. You know, the Florida governor taking so long to close down those beaches, I'm sure is going to have an impact. I think we're already seeing the impact of various leaders not having taken seriously the information, of various individuals not having taken seriously the information, whereas contrast that with where Governor of California, Gavin Newsom, took early measures around social distancing that are starting to pay off. So I think this really amounts to an abuse of the bully pulpit and to misusing that megaphone that the president has, in fact, not to reassure the public, not to present scientifically valid information, but to obfuscate, to misinform.
Bina Venkataraman, thank you very much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.
And when we come back, will Donald Trump be held accountable for everything that we were just discussing?